What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Eye on the U, the Miami Herald show of all things University of Miami sports. I'm your host, Andre Fernandez, back once again with my partner in crime, Jordan McPherson, our University of Miami beat writer. Jordan, it was a spring football game weekend for the U this week. We're going to talk a little bit about who stood out, who didn't take part, what's next for the Hurricanes. We'll have a little Carson Beck update as well. And transfer portal season is officially underway. The movement has begun of players to different teams back and forth. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on with that. How long does it last for now? And how does it affect the University of Miami? We're going to see some of the new potential additions, areas they need to address, and that sort of thing. And we'll take a quick dive onto that the baseball diamond, talking about how they've been doing lately. We'll talk a little bit about that. But the basketball team, speaking of the transfer portal, already with even more additions, including a well-known name if you're a fan of South Florida high school basketball. We'll talk about that and the additions that Coach Jai Lucas has made to his coaching staff as well. But let's start with that spring football game, Jordan. How did the Canes look? I mean, in terms of being a spring scrimmage, how much did you take from it, and what were some of the highlights?
Yeah, so I'm going to just start right at the top. Like I've said throughout most of spring, offense, I'm taking a lot of it with a grain of salt just for the fact that Carson Beck was not participating in it as he recovered from his elbow surgery. That said, the defense did look sharp for most of the game. The way they split it up, the first half was full tackling, full contact, full everything. Second half was a little more thud-based, basically no true tackling, no hitting to the ground. Quarterbacks didn't get touched at all. If a defender got close enough to a quarterback, whether it was on a design run or on a sack, tackle for loss, what have you, they blew a whistle if a defender got close enough. But that said, the defense was swarming. Of the 7 drives during the first half where there was tackling, the offense only scored twice. There was 1 touchdown. There was a field goal right at the end. The defense forced 3 turnovers. They had a goal line stand with Raul Popo Aguirre stopping Mark Fletcher on 4th and goal from the 1, which had Mario Cristobal saying, as an offensive lineman, that play from that perspective made me want to projectile vomit about the way the offense executed or did not execute on that play. But for me, seeing the defense start to thrive and start to look like what Corey Haverman wants it to look like, that's a really good first step, especially considering they've only been practicing for about 5 weeks. So that was really good. In terms of some specific players, the main guy on offense, and it's a guy who we've been talking up basically all spring, freshman Malachi Toney. He looks the part already. He rotated around with basically all 3 teams on offense. He caught passes from all 3 quarterbacks, Emory Williams, Judd Anderson, and Luke Nickel. And he just looks so confident and so smooth in the slot. He was able to make some contested catches. He was able to use his speed to get some separation. He has soft hands. He caught the first touchdown of the game, which he was going up against Charles Brantley in the slot. Catches it in close range, breaks away from him, and runs for about a 20-yard touchdown. And on the drive before that, he had another play where he caught a dime from Luke Nickel that got overturned because of a penalty. But Malachi Toney, hands down, was the top player that I saw throughout the spring game. And a couple of guys on the defense specifically, I'm going to shout out a couple of the guys in the secondary that we didn't really talk about much. Markeith Williams, a junior on the team. He's played sparingly the first couple of years at Miami. And because there were a few guys who didn't play, and one of those guys who is now transferring out, who we'll touch on later, he got to get starting reps at safety opposite Zechariah Poyser, the Jacksonville State transfer. And he was just really active. He was around the ball a lot. And another guy, Amari Williams, one of the true freshmen, had one of the 2 interceptions from the defense in the spring game. So they were both pretty good as well. But all in all, again, it's a spring game. There was a lot of limitations, a lot of stuff that wasn't fully executed. There were a few big names that did not take part or were limited in the spring game. So
what were some of those?
Yeah, some of those guys. Yeah. So on the offense, JoJo Trayer didn't participate. Tight end Elijah Lofton didn't do anything. Obviously, Carson Beck. On defense, Ruben Bain and Akeem Ezador didn't take part in the first half, the tackling portion. Ogie Frederic, who's one of their top returning cornerbacks, wasn't out there at all. Those were the main names that I can think of right off the top of my head. But again, that's a significant portion of the group, especially when you consider when you consider JoJo Trader is supposed to be one of their top receivers, Elijah Lawson is supposed to be one of their big tight ends, and not having your top two defensive line out, your defensive line and your top two edge rushers, it really makes it hard to gauge what you have or how the depth chart's going to organize if 1 and 2 aren't out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's hard to take a lot from these types of scrimmages and things like that, because you're not at full strength. I mean, obviously one of your key guys, obviously your most key in theory, Carson Beck, still not out there. But something to be said about the receivers, and I'm sitting here smiling like a proud, I don't know, uncle, dad, whatever. Something to be said about the receivers that have come out of South Florida in these last few years. I mean, for Malachi to be doing that already, in his first steps there at UM, literally. And you have the juxtaposition of then, unfortunately, we couldn't see JoJo Trader, the other acquisition of these great group of receivers. I mean, look at the guys who have come out of there. Even particular American heritage with Malachi. I mean, they have guys coming up right now. Brandon Innes before that Miami did not get. But for them to at least nab two like that, to nab Trader and to nab a talent like Tony, it shows you that they're going to have a big impact very soon, probably even this fall right away for this team. And again, it's like everyone's eagerly anticipating to see how that looks with Carson Beck in the fold. But curious, how did Luke Nickel look to you overall in the time he did play?
Yeah, I liked what I saw from Luke Nickel. He was accurate. He tested the secondary. The way I would break it down, of the three, Emery and Luke Nickel were definitely the top two. Judd Anderson, there was a clear gap between him and the other two. Emery Williams was I don't really want to say passive, but a lot of his stuff was short and intermediate. He only had a couple real deep balls, but his accuracy was there. Luke Nickel took a lot of chances, and most of them panned out in his favor. He did throw an interception that he probably want to have back off of just a bad read, could have just thrown the ball away. But there's a lot of promise there. And I remember watching him that season opener in the high school season last year when they played at American Heritage. Mm-hmm. He looked sharp, and it was fun to see him there. Obviously, the high school setting is a lot different than the college setting, but Luke Nickel definitely progressed a lot as spring went on, and they might have something there with him. Definitely, obviously Carson Beck is your guy right now. You're hoping that it's Carson Beck from start to finish, nothing happens, but it seems like they have something good there waiting in the wings in Luke Nickel.
Right. And that's good to hear, because it feels like, at least, just from observing it, that's the in-house guy with the most upside that you want to see flourish, just in case. Maybe even, obviously these days you bring in a guy in the portal every year, it seems like some teams do. But if you had a guy that could consistently be there for more than a season, it seems like he's the one. He's the best one as the in-house candidates that they just recruited right out of high school. And he's got the package. He's got the talent. Let's see if he can do it. Let's see if he can do it when it gets to that point. But encouraging signs for sure. But we wanted to also look at what's next for the team, in the immediate future. And I think that ties perfectly right into our conversation about the transfer portal. I guess the next steps for this Hurricane squad is now they handle the comings and goings of college football.
Yeah, so the transfer portal is obviously the immediate next thing. It opened on Wednesday. It goes until the 25th. That 10-day block is the window for players to enter the portal. They don't necessarily have to make their decision by then, but they have to be in the portal by April 25th if they want to transfer. And then after that, once the Hurricanes start figuring out who they have, who's coming, who's going, they're going to have some player-led practices throughout the summer. Obviously, nothing that involves the coaching staff, because they can't really do anything like that until they pick back up in late July. But they're going to have some player-led stuff, which is good considering, again, Carson Beck didn't throw all spring. He started throwing again this week, which is the next step that they needed him to take. So the fact that Carson will have a chance to start building a rapport with his teammates over the summer before everything formally begins in late July, 1 month before the season starts with that big matchup against Notre Dame, that's going to be a critical time period for figuring out what they have, getting that chemistry built, getting as much of a rapport as you can in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, and 3 Canes already reportedly in as of this recording. Nykar, Josh Horton, Zaquan Patterson.
Yeah. I know, Dre. I know. Yeah, that was a tough one, hearing that one, because again, we all knew it seemed like Zaquan was slotted to if not start opposite Zechariah Poyser at safety, that he was going to be one of the main guys in the rotation. And again, we talked so much, especially watching him in spurts last year as a freshman, just seeing how he built off what he did down the high school ranks down here. And that's a tough one for them to lose, especially since safety depth really isn't where it is compared to their cornerback depth. Obviously, a lot of their transfer additions in the secondary that they got outside of Poyser were corners. And they knew they needed up that, but now they're going to have to figure out, how do they address safety? Do they go out and get another safety? Do they rely on a Markeith Williams, a Dylan Day, and Amari Wallace? Or, and so this is something interesting that Corey Heatherman brought up last week before the spring game, how his goal, regardless of the packaging, is to get the best 11 defenders on the field. Not necessarily looking at position, looking at getting the best 11. So does that mean, does he dip into his cornerback depth and move a guy up to safety? If that means you're getting the best 11 on the field, does that mean guys just continue to rotate around and you just figure out what works until you have the combination? That's going to be something that's going to be interesting to follow up. And on the receiver side, Nye Carr, who entered in on Wednesday, that's a tough one just considering the state of the Hurricanes wide receiver depth. They were already going to be light at the boundary receiver spot because it was going to be basically, it was looking like it was going to be between JoJo, CJ Daniels, and Nye Carr as your main three. Now that Nye Carr's gone, you're basically down to two guys, JoJo and CJ Daniels, the Liberty transfer. Your slot spot is going to be Malachi Tony and or Ray Joseph. They're the main two inside. We know that. But now the Hurricanes have to either trust in the rest of their true freshman class, Josh Moore and Dalen Upshaw being the other two, in addition to Malachi Tony, or they're going to have to heavily pursue a receiver in the transfer portal. I was thinking they were going to be pursuing someone in the portal regardless, because you need that depth. You need to get another experienced receiver in that room, regardless of what was going to happen anyway. Now it just emphasizes, it just adds the emphasis to that group that much more.
Yeah, once injuries come up, once injuries start to happen, you need that. I mean, I get the whole 11 best guys, and that's fine, and that'll work for a while, but stuff happens. Yeah. You need all the depth you can. And honestly, if they ever want to get to where they want to get to, you look at every team that's won or truly contended for a national title, they have that. They're 2 and 3 deep at every spot, pretty much. I mean, like reliable depth at every spot. And when Miami has to get to that point, let's see what they can do in the portal. I mean, any names maybe that have been rumored or popping up? We know some areas to prioritize, like you said, receiver for sure, D tackle, some linebacker wouldn't hurt, running back might not hurt, safety now for sure. Any names floating around that maybe they've been sort of at least rumored tied to?
Yeah, I mean, on the receiver front, the big name so far is Traber Pena, who was absolute stud at Syracuse last year. I believe he had close to like 1,200, 1,300 yards. I'm actually trying to look up his exact numbers right now, but I remember watching him in the game against Miami to close out the regular season. He absolutely torched them, which honestly, considering the state of what that secondary was last year, may not say much specifically about them, but he is a veteran out there. He has 1 year of eligibility left, and he's right now the big name in the portal. He has been connected to Miami. So he had 84 catches, 941 yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns last season. And he has 109 catches, 1,200 yards, and 10 touchdowns so far throughout his career over 41 games, 14 starts. Almost all those starts were last season. Second team All ACC. And his Miami game, I'm trying to see if I can get the exact numbers there. 128 yards on 6 catches and a touchdown in that game against Miami that knocked them out of contention for the ACC championship game. He's right now the main guy that is looking like, or at least that's the main guy so far on the market that's been pegged to them. But in terms of other spots, I mean, in addition to wide receiver, we touched on safety. I would think they're probably going to go for another defensive tackle because, I mean, they got David Blade Jr. in the portal. They have Ahmad Moten. They have Justin Scott. But beyond that, there really isn't much there. And again, like you said, layering that depth is going to be key, is going to be integral. So defensive tackle is the spot where they'll probably need to look. And then the other two spots where I think you have to at least consider would be running back, not necessarily for a starter, because again, you got Mark Fletcher, you got Jordan Lyle, you got Gerard Pringle as your 1, 2, 3. But to add beyond that, you obviously having 4 to 5 running backs that you're confident in is the ideal scenario. They have those top 3. Chris Wheatley Humphreys is their other running back on scholarship. They can get a 5th. That would be that would be ideal for this offense. And then the last spot that I would be looking at is linebacker, just because you have Wesley Bissainthe, you have Jalen Alderman. That's really it in terms of, and Popo Aguirre. That's really it in terms of your proven guys. They need to figure out, do they want Wesley Bissainthe to be their middle linebacker to take over that spot that Francisco Malinoa had the last 2 years? Or do they want to keep him at outside linebacker, which is where he's played each of the last 3 years? And we've seen him making those strides as outside linebacker. Do they want to keep him where he's comfortable and where they know that he can excel? Or do they want to move him over there, give him that more of a veteran role, and then either way have to figure out what they're going to do outside? So D-tackle, linebacker, running back, receiver, and safety. Those would be the 5 spots that I would be prioritizing over this spring window.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see all the personnel moves as this team moves forward more and more into the offseason, more the player-driven part of it. But again, as much depth as they can add, especially those key areas where they're hurting right now, like, where one injury could really change things, that's where they need to address for sure. So let's see what they can come up with in the portal over the next week or so, and see what they can do. But switching gears now, let's talk a little hoops. Who also another team, obviously, that's in the off season right now, but an exciting part of it, which hasn't been said for a while with the dismal year they were coming off of. But now everything's brand new, everything's fresh. Jai Lucas is adding coaches left and right, and a big acquisition out of Miami. Really, I mean, I know he didn't spend this past season in Miami, but we both covered this kid. I believe. I think you covered him too,
Yes.
Jordan.
Yeah, I had a year from him. Yeah,
Dante Allen, everybody. Dante Allen. Former 2-time Miami Herald Player of the Year and many other accolades while he was at Riviera Prep, led them to 2 consecutive state titles, then transferred this past season to Montverde Academy where he played there, started for that team. Great talent, versatile wing player, the son of Malik Allen, the assistant coach of the Miami Heat. We know Dante's been around basketball for a long time. He decommitted from Villanova, and one of Jai Lucas's new acquisitions as he looks to rebuild this roster literally from the ground up after losing pretty much everybody off that dismal season, which is not entirely a bad thing. But this core group that he's starting to put together, I mean, granted, still a lot of building to be done. We'll see what happens this season in this first year, but it seems like it's a good building block, and he's attracting young talent. And he also, we'll get to that part too, he's also brings in a couple of coaches. We talked about Andrew Moran before, the Columbus coach joining him. Also brings in 2 more, C.Y. Young with a lot of ties, a Carroll City grad, and Eric Pastrana as well. So it looks like the local flavor on this staff, potentially. I mean, again, Miami doesn't, South Florida, you don't see droves and droves of top-end recruits like we do in football. But every year there's a few. And a lot of times most of the time, they do not stay home. I mean, look at the Boozers, for example. Can that start to change? And maybe now with this staff, maybe they start hanging on to these 4 and 5, the rare 4 and 5 stars that come out of South Florida.
Yeah, and just one point to bring up: who recruited the Boozers when he was at Duke?
There you go. Yeah.
So,
well, that's what I'm saying. But it could be. It adds to it for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And this is, again, Jai Lucas has said this, that he wants to establish Miami as a place for players and talent from the state of Florida, and to be able to go even more hyper local and do what he's doing in terms of South Florida. That's a boost. That's definitely big. And I mean, like you said with Dante Allen, 4-star guy, number 12 combo guard in the country in the 2025 class, number 64 player overall, regardless of position. That's a big get for this team, and especially to build on the transfers that they got. To have a guy who, yes, he finished his career at Montverde, but to have a guy who is homegrown, to be that first real freshman recruiting class commit, that's a big get there. And then when you look at what you have coaching staff wise, you got with CY, with Charlton Young, he has the Miami ties, not just Miami ties, he has ACC ties. He was he was on Larry Hamilton's staff at FSU. That's right. He coached before that. He was at Missouri, most recently was at Missouri. He's been part of Power 5 teams. He's been part of Power 5 coaching staffs. He knows what it takes to succeed. And he has a track record with some big name guys who ended up becoming NBA draft picks. Patrick Williams, Scotty Barnes, another local guy that he had a big part in developing. you can, again, start seeing these pieces. You see the puzzle pieces start really coming together. And again, it's a big get. Again, it's still early, like we said. Not sure how much we should be hyping up, but it is a good thing to see the direction that they're going in. And Jai Lucas is starting to forge that path that he wants to very early in the cycle.
Yeah, and they're getting a lot of size. We talked about that last week. Some of the guys that they've brought in, 6'9", 6'10". That's important. You're going to need that if you want to be a title contender. We saw it we've seen it with all the teams that have recently had the majority of the teams. Look at you look at the Gators this past year, a lot of size. You look last year, Purdue with Zach Edey. You look at UConn, they had two guys in the middle there that were just unstoppable. You need that, and he's building that. And traditionally, Miami hasn't had a lot of that. They've had occasionally one guy here and there. But if he can establish just the look of a roster that maybe Miami hasn't seen in quite some time, or maybe ever, who knows? It's a shame they couldn't get the boosters, because if you would have added Cameron and Caden to that mix, now you're talking serious turnaround in one quick season. But what I've always, you never know how it's going to translate from one level to the next. But from seeing Dante play at the high school level, I didn't see him much this year because he was at Montverde, and obviously you're surrounded by tons of talent on that roster. But he did start, and he obviously played against a lot of good competition. He was in the national tournament at the end, the Chipotle Nationals, and so on. He always had the clutch gene. Like every time there was a big game, more than once, he saved Riviera's season in the toughest of moments. I remember one time against Westminster Academy, they were down 16. He rallies the troops, leads them on a run. Another time, it was always Westminster Academy because that was the one they'd always run into. Yeah. So long story short, he has that aside from his skill set, aside from what he brings in terms of basketball, sometimes you have it or you don't in those pressure situations. And I think that's a credit probably to just the upbringing he had around his dad and being around, the Heat culture there, to a degree, all of that. He's going to bring that to Miami. That's definitely a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's going to be very interesting to watch as we get closer to basketball season.
For sure. Now let's talk a little bit about this baseball team. They've won back-to-back series. I mean, they were struggling for a while. They went back-to-back series against Pitt and Duke. The Duke series kind of went back and forth, but they came out with 2 out of 3 there. And then they won the midweek game in a comeback fashion again against Florida Atlantic on Tuesday night. Got a chance to see them in person. This team, again, it's a midweek game. Pitching was okay, but the hitting's got. I think the top of the order for them is good. They seem like they're consistent at the plate. Seems like they got to get a little more from the rest of the lineup though, and maybe that'll come around now in May for them. I'm not sure, but if this team can just pitch a little more consistently and maybe get some more contributions from other guys in the lineup, I don't know. They have a chance to at least maybe sneak in. I don't know. They right now, where they stand, they're hovering sort of close to the 500 mark, starting to get a little bit above it, but still a long way to go.
They're 4 over 500 right now, and that obviously winning the last 2 series, that's 5 of their last 7 games helps. But like you said, at the top of the lineup, Jake Ogden's been one of their more consistent bats all year. Daniel Cuvée seems like he's finally starting to heat up. 44 RBI, 7 home runs. Obviously, they need his bat to be the bat in order for them to be successful. He's the heart of that lineup right now. A couple other guys who've been really surprising. Fabio Peralta wasn't really part of the lineup to start the season, and all of a sudden, towards the last month or so, he's become basically steadily in the 2-hole, playing center field and right field. He's hovering just below 300 right now. Yeah. Freshman really started to surprise there. But like you said, with the rotation or just the pitching in general, it's been a lot of moving parts. Unfortunately, Nick Robert, who was their opening night starter, he's out for the year. They've basically, outside of Griffin Hughes, they don't really have anybody else from their starting rotation still in the rotation. So they moved Brian Walter into the bullpen to become their closer. He has saves in each of his last 3 games since moving into that role. So hopefully that sparks something for him. He was a lot of up and down for him, at least at the start of the season as the Sunday guy. But they need to figure out how they're going to get their innings. That's the main thing. And that's been a problem outside of Griffin Hughes in terms of their starters on the weekend. That's been a growing pain. And that was something that I alluded to at the start of the season, that was going to be interesting to see because they didn't have anybody who was a tried and true starter going into the season. They like the depth, they like the guys they have, but they didn't have that any real established guy when it comes to being a starting pitcher. And that sort of reared its head a little bit during the beginning of ACC play, and they seem to be figuring out ways to patch it together, but will they be able to sustain that over the final stretch of the season? That's going to be very interesting to watch as they go through what's left of their schedule.
Yeah, good to see. Going back to the Peralta, you mentioned Fabio Peralta that you mentioned before. I got a chance to see him at Miami Christian. He was part of that those title runs there in recent years. But he, this is a kid that at one point was being regarded as high as potentially a day 2 draft pick. And so he's got the tools. He's got the tools for sure. I think it's just a matter, like you said, maybe putting it together, maybe the early adjustment period to that level. But starting to come around now too. Another guy that has struggled. They have him at the bottom of the order right now. But this kid, another one that I saw in high school that can bring it too, is Michael Torres from Doral Academy. His numbers don't look very good right now. He's struggled so far. But last night against Florida Atlantic, went opposite field, roped the double into the corner, drove in a run. Maybe it's one of these kids. He gets a few of those games like that, could start to turn it around. Maybe just going through a little bit of the tough adjustment you have as a freshman. But again, I talk about that part of the lineup. If he can get going, guys like that are a little more at the bottom of the order, could make this team a little more dangerous once we get to ACC time, and might give him an outside shot at maybe making it to the regionals. Yeah,
no doubt about it. And with Mikey Torres, he started the season as the starting center fielder mostly because of his glove. Again, his defense is elite. And JD Arteaga said that from the jumps. Like, if we only had to worry about his defense, I'd be rolling him out there every single day. But the bat they knew that the bat was going to be a work in progress. We saw some glimpses early. He showed a little bit of pop. But again, it's, like you said, it is a work in progress for him. He's only hitting 179. He was walking early in the season, but he was walking. He has 17 walks, only 12 strikeouts. So the eye is there. It's just a matter of finishing the at-bats. That's the main thing for him, is being able to finish what he's able to do. And when he makes contact, making enough contact that he's able to get into the outfield, find a hole for it to drop. And you get one or two of those to drop, and never know. Confidence is a crazy thing in baseball. If you're able to get one or two hits to go, regardless of how they get there, it can do wonders for a guy.
Yeah. Well, we saw this team get a little bit hot at the end last year in the ACC tournament. It didn't turn out to be all the way they hoped, but they got close, and you never know if they get hot again. This team's a little bit more further along this year. It's just the big picture. Regionals used to be taken for granted at Miami. Even hosting them used to be taken for granted at Miami. And they're trying to get it back to that. I know JD Arteaga is trying to get it back to what, he was there for all of that as a player, and then later as the pitching coach for so many years. They're working to try and get it back to what it once was. Baby steps. Maybe this could be a year that they, sneak in and get a bid and take one step further. We'll see. One thing that hasn't lost its I'm sorry, go ahead. I was gonna your favorite item at Marklight Field, but
go ahead. No, I see the floor.
One thing that hasn't lost a step is the Marklight shake. I could say that. And I don't know what your favorite flavor is. I tried the JD last night. I used to be a big sugarcane person. The JD was amazing last night. That Nutella and Oreo is phenomenal.
Yeah,
let's just say. What's yours?
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly, I just go very basic. I just go with the Oreo.
Okay.
But but I mean, you really can't go wrong with it. I mean, it's cookies and cream. It's a staple. But I mean, that said, with their specialty shakes, because they have had a few interesting ones so far this year. Did you see the one from last weekend?
No, I didn't get a chance. No, yeah. What are they? I saw that the menu's extensive compared to what it used to be.
Yeah. So last weekend was the Masters. They decided to pay homage to the Masters by doing a pimento cheese sandwich milkshake, which was a vanilla shake, pimento cheese, potato chips, and then a mini pimento cheese sandwich on top.
I can't get yeah.
I love you guys dearly. What were you thinking with that one? I appreciate the risk. I appreciate the gamble. I appreciate the let's try it, but that one I think was just one step too far.
Bit much. Well, that's what I was going to say. You can't knock them for being adventurous, because they will push it. They will push the boundary to try and get something.
They've done some incredible ones. I mean, opening weekend against Niagara, because it's Niagara's in the Buffalo area. They did a Buffalo wing. They did a Buffalo wing sauce one.
They did see.
They did that. The last time they hosted a regional when they had Texas, they did a brisket. They did a brisket barbecue one.
Brisket barbecue. Yep.
Yeah. When UF was here back in the day, they did one with fried gator bites included. I remember that. UCF, they do the Dole Whip, which is obviously fantastic. And when they have Jersey here, they do the cannoli. They do the cannoli shake, which I had that this year when Princeton was here and was absolutely spot on. But yeah, again, they have there are some of their specialties that naturally just slide in and make perfect sense. And there are other ones that make you scratch your head a little bit, but also make you think, would I try this? Should I try it at least once?
Yeah.
A lot of them I debate whether or not I should or could, but most of the time they at least make you think about it.
If you go with someone and maybe there's always the split the shake idea. Like that's what I did with my wife yesterday too. If she didn't like one, we were like, all right, we could always, grab a couple straws, share it, whatever.
Yeah.
Or if I don't like it, here you go. We can always do that with the flavors. But look, it's an institution over there. If anyone hasn't tried it yet, highly recommend. Probably don't highly recommend having them all the time for your own good, but every once in a while, it's a good treat for sure out there. So, and it's still, the Mark Light experience is always fun. Get that, you have that college baseball feel. They've renovated the stadium a little bit, but it's still pretty fun. I went for years as a kid when that team was, again, at the time where the regionals were, when Omaha was taken for granted, like they were just going to make it automatically every season. Maybe they can build and get back to that at some point soon. They're working towards it, but let's see. This team has shown some improvement in all seriousness, so let's see if they can, knock on the door to the regionals this season. The ACC, there's still few more series to go. Looking at their schedule, I believe they end with Notre Dame. They still have a few more in between that. They face NC State. That's right. They have Georgia Tech. They have an interesting one.
Georgia Tech's gonna be a big one this week. I mean, they're leading the ACC right now at 14-4, but the rest of their slate, they've got NC State, who is 9-6 in league play. Boston College, yeah. That's gonna be their interesting games up there next weekend is gonna be really fun. If you want to break that down.
And I was gonna say that the Sunday game at Fenway Park, which is an interesting treat to play there at Fenway for them.
Yeah.
They get to do that. And then NC State is at home. They have one trip left to Charlottesville after that. Then they close with Notre Dame 3-game set, and then it's off to the ACC tournament after that. So let's see. I mean, 21-17 right now. ACC record not great, 6-9, but not completely abysmal either. We'll see. Again, I think it's like we talked about. If they can get hot, they haven't been too good on the road either. That's the other thing. They've been fairly decent at Mark Light, 15-7 overall. But the road record has not been good, 5-10. So that's got to improve if they really want to realistically try to get into this thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's going to be an interesting final month to see what they can do if they can make this push. But again, there's a lot of time left. There's a lot that can be done between now and start of the NCAA tournament. Let's see if they can build off what they've done these last 2 weekends.
Yep, and we will follow that along. We will continue to follow, obviously, what happens with the football team as this transfer portal window progresses, and we'll bring you any more updates on baseball, basketball, and anything else. Follow Jordan's work at MiamiHerald.com as always, and we thank you for joining us as usual here at the Eye on the U. Thank you for watching us. You can always catch us at MiamiHerald.com, as I said before, or on YouTube, of course. We'll be back, if not next week, we'll be back soon to continue to recap some of this off-season movement with the team. And until then, for Jordan McPherson, I'm Andre Fernandez. Thanks for watching, everybody.